It's time we as a nation thought about how much we depend on our grocery store clerks, our bus drivers, our transit workers. These are the folks who keep the food supply going and secure. These are the custodial and cleaning crews that make things are safe and clean. And so many more people out there that we never pay attention to. When was the last time people took the time to look you in the eye and say, thank you. Thank you for what you're doing. Thank you for what you're doing. But you know, we're seeing it clearly now. We're seeing it as clear as day. We're lost without you. And this is not an exaggeration. We're lost without all of you. All across the nation. It's so often our lowest paid workers who have to step up during this crisis and crisis like this. You're putting yourselves on the line every single day, and you're sacrificing so much under dire circumstances to do your job, and you're doing it for not just yourself, for all of us. And you're essential to our society in times of crisis and beyond. And you deserve not just our thanks, but our respect. You deserve a safe workplace and fair pay. You deserve personal protective equipment, including gloves and masks that enables you to do your job as safely as possible. You deserve to have the appropriate space between you and your coworkers and the ability to wash your hands frequently. You know, we're seeing during this crisis just why it is so important for American workers to belong to unions so that they have someone to fight for them and with them, putting your interest first, standing up for workplace safety and the needs of every business to make sure that workers are protected against infectious disease. You deserve a government that's working hard for you. And you are as hard as you're working for us. You know, the government that not only sets but enforces worker safety standards.
Stop. I wanted to show you what Joe Biden was saying as he was trying to get elected into office. That speech, looking right into the camera. It's just me and whoever is on the other end of that camera. I am Joe Biden and I'm going to do it up. Workers. We need you workers. You are usually the lowest paid. Nobody pays attention to you, and yet you're there every day putting your life on the line. He sounds a lot like me, right? You're putting your life on the line. But what's the other part to that I add? Why aren't they worth $15 an hour? If you're going to say that, if you're going to make the speech, and if you're going to mean that speech, not say it in this kind of political way that just tries to chide Trump, but if you mean it, flesh to bone, that those workers that put themselves on the line every day, nearly 600,000 Americans have gone up in smoke over the course of the last year as a result of government malfeasance. Now, you could say Trump was in office. Doesn't really matter. At the end of the day, the government of the United States was directly responsible for the deaths of hundreds of thousands of its citizens from, again, malfeasance. Part of it was a weakened governmental system. Part of it was economic situations in various places. And part of it was people who are on the lower end of the economic scale were that much more forced to be in that job because that job was physical in location, which meant that they put themselves on the line for people like Joe Biden, from people like Joe Manchin that was against those same people making $15 an hour. And what is her name? Kristen Semina or whatever her name is. I guess I'm making the point that if Joe Biden is going to come out here and get that speech where he's talking to the American public, and by the way, $15 an hour, he's introduced this multiple times, either during the campaign trail and after when he won office, and you understand the rhetoric and the line of thought, it makes perfect sense. These were our heroes. They were out there every day putting their lives on the line for us. They deserve $15 an hour. It rolls. It makes perfect sense. When you say, look, we have all of these people that have died disproportionately, poor, disproportionately, people of color, and those people were out there fighting and working for us. And yet, they're not making a living wage. Tens of millions of them would be affected by that $15 an hour wage. Joe Biden said he was going to get $15 an hour. The public gave him the ability to do it. They gave him the two senators at the very end. He has 51 votes with Kamala Harris. Get rid of the filibuster. This is not a situation of Joe Biden failing. This is a situation of betrayal. That's what the $15 an hour thing is. Honest to God, if Joe Biden, if it burned in him like the sun burning itself, that he wanted to get $15 an hour passed, did he have the capability to do it? And the answer, honest to God, is yes. What would he have to do? Yes, he would have to knock down the parliamentarian. And yes, he would have to get people like Manchin on his side. And yes, he would need to get rid of the filibuster, potentially, and get his people in line to back his agenda. Yes, that requires energy. That requires verve. That requires vigorousness, urgency in regards to what is taking place. That is someone who looks more like an FDR. This is something else. The $15 an hour was ditched. And not only ditched, it was ditched while they celebrated this other passage of a bill that was somewhat mangled and not what Joe Biden basically told the public he was going to give. There were nice things in it. I'm not detracting from that. You can't detract from it. Some of the items that were very good, the $300 going to parents and whatnot. The, $1,400, my wife still hasn't gotten hers, but, there's that. But it's not what you said. And honestly, the $15 an hour cut so deep in regards to the number of people that would have benefited. And it wasn't even immediate. It was over the course of several years. But yet, the American worker, despite all of the schmoozing and sweet talk, was ultimately not worth the energy to ensure that that American worker that Joe Biden just said we depended on. You deserve a safe workplace and a fair pay. What's a fair pay? You kept saying less than 15 is a starvation wage. Have you changed that point of view? Somebody should be questioning every day that Jen Psaki is there asking that very specific question. How is the president going to get the $15 an hour pass? Is he going to get rid of the filibuster? If he is not going to get rid of the filibuster, does he believe that the other people are for it? Has the president just abandoned that? Has the president betrayed the people that he said he was going to do that for? The 40 million Americans or so that don't make $15 an hour that would have benefited. My mom never made $15 an hour. Think about that. The entire time when she started working as a kid. And they were getting paid, I think, like $7, like the minimum wage or something. And just over the course of time, she worked with a company or worked with the state. It slowly went up, but not to that point. What would my life have been like if my mom was making twice as much as what she would have been making before? Or let's say, a $5, $6 extra a month. That is dramatic. It is dramatic. And you casually throw it away like it's nothing and then celebrate on the grave of it. So when I see that, what am I to think of the PRO Act? What am I to think of the PRO Act? Now, the PRO Act is basically the Union Act. It's that act that creates unions. The name of it, let's see. This is, I want to get the exact name. There it is. Protecting the Right to Organize Act. Now, unions have been pushing with this because this is the act that they believe is a game changer in regards to allowing unionization to form. Amazon winning that last contest should get across something. Whatever the pressures that were there, unions and those companies have dramatic capability of trying to get those workers to fight and go against their own self-interest. Everything from even holding those workers in the meetings constantly, asking them, hey, who are you going to vote for? Who are you going to vote for? And pushing these guys with this kind of pressure where these guys think their job in and of itself is at stake in almost this existential way. So they want the PRO Act. Biden, at every opportunity, unions! We must support unions. They're the backbone of America. Yeah, we get that. But you also said that the $15 an hour was necessary, pertinent. You said anything less than $15 an hour was a starvation wage. The public gave you the powers and the capabilities you needed to pass the $15 an hour, and you didn't have the care, concern, verve, drive, or anything else to do it. So now I'm stuck in the situation of saying, okay, what about the PRO Act? Now the unions have started to put their foot down. And so the unions, this came out right here. Because I'm going to show you the series of events to get across what's going to be likely a failure. Union warns Senate Democrats pass the PRO Act or else. Pass it or else. Now, what's the or else? Well, you depend on us for various supports. So Senator Kelly, he is not signed on to the PRO Act. Every other Democrat there, with the exception of Kelly, I think Semina, I think it's 2 Democrats, right, and there's 1 other Democrat that hasn't signed on to it. Those 2 Democrats aren't up for election this term. Kelly is. And so the thought is, if you want our support as a union, you will pass this act and you will get your people in line to make that happen. Now, what are you going to do with this? Now, Joe Manchin has got on board. But what about Kelly? And not just Kelly. Let's say you were able to get every last Democrat on board. That gives you 51 votes. And that in and of itself is not enough to pass it. How are you going to do it? Just like the Republicans weren't going to push for $15 an hour. They were never going to give you that. So how were you going to do it if you weren't willing to torch the sky and get rid of the filibuster? The Senate is already a minority body chamber. California, as big as it is, what, the 5th, 6th largest economy? 2 senators. Iowa, as tiny as it is, 2 senators. It is already a minority body. You have people all across the world that deal with parliamentarian elections without having this weird, ridiculous device that was never meant to serve that very specific purpose of a filibuster. Yes, it takes a certain degree of responsibility to try to get your items passed. But the reality of it is something that I was trying to point out beforehand, that the filibuster is going to be there because Biden wants a restraint where he can say, I couldn't do this because of the Republicans, something that he probably didn't want to do anyway. Just because a politician vocally says that they are for something, that doesn't really matter as much. Yes, there are pressures that are on them that are getting them to say that. But it's different than the pressures that are acting on them that prevents them from going through with it. I put to you that the pressures that prevent them from going through with it are the ones that are indeed calling the shots, with the shallow optics being the other. Joe Biden probably got word of this. You had multiple unions that basically told the Democrats, you better fall in line. Right here. This is Politico. During the Wednesday call, unions, including the IUPAT, Communications Workers of America, and American Federation of Government Employees, made it clear to the DSCC that the party needs to get lawmakers like Kelly in line to clear the PRO Act for Biden's desk and for his signature. If they can't, they may have to consider withholding their support. And therein lies your problem. Not consider withholding your support. You will withhold your support. There's a difference in those things. One is definitive. One is putting your foot down. One is being very clear and saying, do this or else. And let them tempt you. Let them make them prove to you how serious you are by letting that individual entirely and completely fail. And I tell you this, next time around, they won't test you in that very specific way when you tell them, back this or else. How long have the unions backed the Democratic Party? And do you really feel that you've gotten anything real for that support? No, they looked at you and they told you you have nowhere else to go. And just like progressives and just like blacks, you sit there and say, damn it, they're right because Republicans are maniacs. I'm making the point that at a certain point, that can't matter anymore. There needs to be a red line drawn in regards to who you would support. I get that they may be incrementalists in regards to some of the policies that they're putting out. But that doesn't necessarily mean it is getting to the quick of the pain in regards to what is taking place. Right here, I ask, why just now? You get the feeling that unions had this level of power before that could have been asserted. And I get it's a terror about the Republican Party getting elected, but the thing is, the Republican Party got elected anyway, despite the fact that you backed a losing party. And I'm talking about various elections. What happens if you didn't back that losing party and they lost? Do you get some level of credibility? Do you get some level of leverage in future negotiations for people being know that you're serious in the way that you go about who you're going to vote for and who you're not going to vote for, and the reasons that you're going to get that vote or not get that particular vote? No, instead, you get this wishy-washy nonsense of, we may have to think about new ways of going about it. Joe Biden comes out with an executive order. The executive order, I would argue right here, is an acknowledgement, a theatrical acknowledgement with glitter that this PRO Act isn't going anywhere. And just to give you an idea of what the PRO Act, what's in it. I mean, so right here. So-called right-to-work laws in more than 24 states allow workers in union-represented workplaces to opt out of the union and not pay union dues. At the same time, such workers are still covered by... So think of it as this way. Unions have to cover people by law. So if they opt into a place where people just say, yeah, I just don't want to pay my dues, well, those people still got to be covered. So you have dwindling resources with the union still covering more and more people. It's a way of trying to destroy the union. The PRO Act would allow unions to override such laws and collect dues from those who opt out in order to cover the costs of collective bargaining and administration of contract. Employer interference and influence in union elections would be forbidden. Company-sponsored meetings with mandatory attendance are often used as lobbying against union organization drives. Such meetings would be illegal. Additionally, employees will be able to cast a ballot in union organizing elections at a location away from the company property. Often, even successful union organizing drives fail to result in an agreement on the first contract between labor and management. The PRO Act would remedy that by allowing certified unions to seek arbitration and mediation to settle such impasses in negotiation. The law would prevent an employer from using its employees' immigration status against them when determining the terms of their employment. It would establish monetary penalties for companies and executives that violate workers' rights. Corporate directories and other officers of the company will be held liable. They consider it a game changer, and they consider it this kind of way of boosting union membership in the United States and balancing. It's not balancing, right? I mean, you need something like a worker co-op in order to balance that stuff for the workers themselves who are running the company. You always have this contradiction that's built into this company. But nevertheless, that's what they are trying to get past. Now, what is the excuse to not pass this? That's the question. And why is the union willing to accept anything less than pass that bill or else? Biden is putting out an executive order. Now, clearly, the executive order is coming as a direct result of that. Meaning this is a reaction to the unions basically putting this news out saying, you better fall in line and get this bill passed or else you don't get our support. Maybe. Can't use maybe in negotiations. I'm telling you that. Biden puts out this. The executive order directs the task force. Okay, so it's called the establishment of the White House Task Force on Worker Organization and Empowerment. Understand what's taking place here. This is a failure that is being sold off as if it's some kind of new policy agenda. It is a failure. It is a betrayal. It's not even a failure. A failure would imply that they tried to do it. They had a good faith try, good faith effort. They put all their energy into it. And they just, like a hero in a movie, failed. That's not this. This is just a betrayal. This is Those heroes! Those heroes! We can't have those heroes having a starvation wage. And then once the deaths go down, you dump those heroes. When you get the opportunity to pass $15 an hour, you ditch those heroes and you allow that starvation wage. You no longer, for whatever particular reason, care about the fact that those heroes are eating starvation wages. And just like this, also, unions are the backbone of America. Joe Biden would say that all the time. That's like his scripted line. That's the line where it's almost like he's programmed to say. His eyes even get the backbone of America. Great. Do something about it. Do something about it. Not the stupid task force. The task force is an outright, overt acknowledgement that they have utterly and entirely failed. And they're trying to allow either A, the union to save face while backing away from this, either you do this or else. Meaning, if the union takes a position that the Democratic Party better back the PRO Act or else, well, if the Democratic Party says kick rocks, what does the union do? Does the union eat crow and still back the Democratic Party? Or are they on some weird level forced to almost not do it? If you're the Democratic Party and you're not going to do the PRO Act, Joe Biden comes out and says, hey, what I'm going to do is I'm going to think about this and we're going to work on empowerment from the White House. That's what we're going to do. Now, the union has two options. The union can say, all right, we really don't want a Republican to go. We put our foot into our mouth because we don't have the balls to continue to go through with this. So we would accept this and we would pretend like this task force is actually something significant. Even though it's not the PRO Act, maybe we can act like it's something, that's great and nice and, it sprinkles on it. Or they can say, that's still unacceptable to us. And it's still unacceptable to us. We will make you fail if you tempt us on this. Well, thing is, this is indicative of them tempting you on this. This is indicative, I would argue, and we will find out, I say, in the coming future, but I would argue that this is indicative of them blowing you off, of them, whatever they may come up here, it doesn't have any level of a force of a PRO Act. Meaning the provisions and everything else with nationwide across the entirety of the United States with the number of unions and everything else forming, having a much, much greater chance to proliferate. That's not this. That's not this. And, the next president that comes in will use this to their own ends. That's assuming that it's still there at all. This is not a win. This is not anything other than a betrayal being sold as some kind of policy progress. It is not policy progress. This is not a positive thing. It is every bit as much of a betrayal as a $15 an hour. And this document basically wraps it with glitter. The President Executive Order directs the task force to make a set of recommendations within 180 days addressing two key issues. First, how can existing policies, programs, and practices be used to promote worker organization and collective bargaining in the federal government? And second, where are new policies needed to achieve the task force mission, and what are the associated regulatory and statutory changes needed? Basically, what do we have at our current disposal to try to get something in the direction of workers' best interests? And let's say maybe even the promotion of your unions. But notice, existing structure. Because what they know is, unless they're willing to get rid of the filibuster, which Biden has shown no willingness to do that, he wouldn't even push the parliamentarian to get the $15 an hour inside of budget reconciliation. But if he's not willing to do that, then I have no clue how the PRO Act gets through Congress. It would need 60 votes because no Republican will vote for it, maybe one or two. But it's not going to get to 60 when it's filibustered. And if it's not going to get to 60 when it's filibustered, okay, that means you need to stop it from being filibustered. How do you do that? You stop it from being filibustered by nuking the sky and getting rid of the filibuster. Once you get rid of the filibuster, 51 votes. Kamala Harris, she becomes a diamond. Last vote, bam, PRO Act. Unions! And then Joe Biden can say unions, and it can mean something. It can mean something. It can be some little thing in him that says, oh, he feels it. His eyes get bright and awake. He's like, I feel something. I feel something. Yeah, Joe Biden, you would feel something because you would have actually done something. You would have actually been able to sign legislation to proliferate unions across the United States, something that you said was necessary and vital for the American workers and for us to grow wages and to keep jobs here and all this other stuff. You said that. I can show you the video again. You said that people shouldn't work on a starvation wage. You said that those people were vital to our society, that they were heroes. They were feeding us and ensuring that we got our food, and they were every day taking the hit. And yet, in the situation where you had the opportunity to ensure that they had $15 an hour, that they weren't living off a starvation wage, you didn't do it. You didn't push for it. Vocally said, here or there. Didn't push for it at all. Didn't push a parliamentarian, didn't get rid of the thing, didn't try to get in budget reconciliation. You didn't do any of the things that would have been necessary to get that passed. The first point. This gives prior incident of being a bullshitter, of meaning taking a particular policy vocally with not necessarily doing anything about the policy in real terms. If you're going to do it with the 15, why wouldn't you do it with something like this? When I know that the people who are putting money in your pocket in no way are for this. Meaning the unions may be able to get you to vocally talk about it, but in real terms, the people who are pulling the strings are the people who are putting dollars in your pocket. Like credit card and ass, Joe Biden just ass jiggling and twerking and whatnot. If you wanted to do something about unions, this is it. You got the power to do it. Use it. Otherwise, let's stop playing around and pretending as if these guys are actually for something when they're not. And the media is going to read this most likely uncritically. They're going to read it uncritically. They probably don't even see the connection between passing or putting out something like this as an executive order versus unions pushing them for the PRO Act, and how it basically means that they're not going to push all that hard to get the PRO Act. They may give you some performative nonsense, but it's not necessarily going to be what would be necessary to get that act passed. And let's be very clear, this is not a situation where they lack the power to do it. They lack the urgency. They lack the will, is more likely than anything else to do it. And that's not just this. That's also the $15 an hour. I'm never going to forgive that. That's so... You call those people heroes, and you said those heroes were starving. And then you turn around and not push for those heroes to get a decent wage. Like, share, and subscribe. And yeah, make sure you subscribe, guys. The YouTube is doing some weird stuff. Thanks all.